What's up, y'all? Welcome on into the GoVols247 Podcast. Wes Rucker coming to you from Fort Rucker Studio here on a pleasant Monday afternoon in God's own Knoxville, Tennessee. How are you? Hope you're well. Hope your weekend was good. Hope it was better than the little frog that was in my throat just now. Hope you had a good time, at least for the second half. Was a little scary, maybe against Mississippi State with Nico Iamaleava with all that situation. We're going to talk about that obviously quickly. Then we'll move on to Georgia week. We got a lot to discuss. Before we do that, just a quick thank you. It is Veterans Day, and there's nothing I think that any of us yahoos on this podcast can say to properly appreciate thanks and how much we owe to those people, those men, those women who have done what they have done. So thank you. That's all we can say. Thank you. We love you. We appreciate it. And go red, white, and blue. Go America. Ben McKee and Patrick Brown with us here on this edition of the podcast. Fellas, how are we today?
I'm good. It's Georgia week. It's going to be a big one on Saturday in Athens.
That is a great way to simply put it, and I will echo Wes's thoughts on Veterans Day. My dad served 23 years in the Army, and so much of the military paved my way and molded me into who I am today, for better or for worse. So thank you to all who have served. Truly, just words do not do it justice. I witnessed the sacrifices firsthand, and far more families witnessed it even more than I did. So thank you to everybody who served. You are greatly appreciated, and hope you enjoy this Monday. On this Monday here in Knoxville, it's been a pretty nice day. So hope it's a pretty nice day where you are listening as well.
Yeah, I'll echo that. I got my grandfather on my mom's side did wrecked some stuff as a pilot there in World War II. Did a lot. My several uncles, several cousins have fought in war. Some of them are still active. Some of them I've had to Skype from overseas a lot over the years, and it does a lot to a family. It takes a village to do some of this stuff. But the men and the women who serve their families, thank you. We love you. We wouldn't be able to do just about any of this without you. So we appreciate it. Guys, Tennessee, this is, I think Josh Heupel put it well on Monday. You have to earn the right to play in games like this. And you treat every game the same. They all count the same, win or loss. Coaches say that. I get it. But this is a big game. This is a game coming up where Tennessee has a chance, if it can do something it hasn't done in a while, which is go to Athens and win. It could basically be one game away from the SEC championship game. And Tennessee would not clinch a spot in the college football playoff, but would be one of the first teams right there knocking on the door to clinch a spot. So it's a big game. We will talk a lot about that game after, I guess, putting a bow on the weekend. Certainly Nico Iamaleava didn't play in the second half. The word since then has been more optimistic. Josh Heupel said after the game he thought it was a precautionary issue with that upper body issue that I think we can all put two and two together on what it is. And then he said he had a great day Monday. That doesn't mean he practiced. That doesn't mean he was out there going through stuff and padded up and all that. But from where things were at halftime of that game to when that announcement was made until now, I think the progression has been pretty good.
Yeah, I mean, I think our message board and our game thread had him collarbone out for the season, shoulder sprain. We had all sorts of shenanigans going on during the second half, and doesn't seem like any of those were on the mark. So yeah, and the direct words from Josh Heupel, who is always so forthcoming with his injury updates on Monday. Was, quote, he was with us today, had a really good day, feel like he'll be in great shape for Saturday, but you guys can monitor whatever the report is that comes out on Wednesday and track it throughout the week. He's referencing the availability reports that come out on Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday nights. The rest of that quote was, but certainly feel like he'll be in a good spot. Now, to your point, Wes, they don't practice per se on Monday. It's kind of more of a accelerated walkthrough kind of deal and some team meetings. So they'll be back on the practice field on Tuesday, but there will be a lot of eyes on that injury report on Wednesday night, Ben, for Nico and maybe for some other guys. But obviously Nico is the big one. But It seems like the vibes are optimistic that he will be able to go, but we'll just have to see. There's always some uncertainty with some of these things, so we'll just have to see how it plays throughout the week, and certainly I think Tennessee's chances of going in there and getting a win that would be so important, just not only for this season but potentially in the bigger picture, certainly are improved if Aid is back there and leading the way for the offense.
Yeah, I'd be surprised if Nico didn't play on Saturday, and that's in large part because of Heupel's comments. He does not seem like somebody who would be stressed about his starting quarterback not playing on Saturday. Seems fairly optimistic in that regard. I know that everybody just assumes that Josh Heupel is lying when he's asked about injuries, and again, as I've said before and gone on a soapbox on before, he's not lying. He's just not revealing. To me, those are different things. But we'll see what happens with Nico. Again, I'd be kind of surprised, just mostly based off of what Heupel has said, both post game and today, earlier this afternoon. Seems very optimistic about Nico's chances of playing this week. So we'll see what happens. But there have been players in the past who, Lance Hurd, Arkansas week. I thought he was going to play that week, based off of what was being said publicly and behind the scenes, and he did not play. So I have been surprised before. I once again will be surprised if Nico does not play on Saturday. And Tennessee needs its quarterback because there's a stark difference from Nico to Gaston. I thought Gaston actually managed the offense somewhat okay once he settled in, and maybe better than okay, and with the help of Dylan Sampson really getting going. But I think that Gaston can probably be a solid game manager, which may be all you need if Tennessee's defensive line can treat Georgia's offensive line the way that Ole Miss did this past weekend. But it doesn't take – my 2-year-old could point out that Tennessee's ceiling is higher with Nico in the game than with him out of the game. So that will obviously be a huge storyline to follow this week. But the early returns here on Veterans Day is positive for Tennessee.
Yeah, I would say I would not call Heupel a liar with injuries. I would say he obfuscates a little bit. I would say he misleads a little bit. I would say he
could you spell whatever that word is you just used? Can you spell that for us?
Obfuscate. And I think there are a couple times where he has lied, but I don't think that makes him a bad person. I just think that's college football coaches, and that this is how they are with injuries. I mean, it's not like he is beyond the pale with this. He just sometimes, like, oh, with Cedric Tillman, yeah, he's got a chance to play this week. He knew damn well Cedric Tillman wasn't playing for a couple months, but he just said it, and that's fine. I mean, I don't take offense to it. It's not the end of the world. I'm just saying, if you ask Heupel a question, he will almost always be honest with you. Unless you ask about an injury, then you're not sure. And that's fine. Now they have injury reports. I would think that probably you'll see Iamaleava, just a guess, I'd say he'll be listed as questionable on Wednesday, and then maybe remain that way, or probable. And then on Saturday, they'll announce it as a game time decision, and then we'll see him warming up and he'll play. That's just a projection, because that seems like, if I were in Tennessee's position, that's probably how I would handle it. So I think they probably do that, or they might lean toward that. Regardless, it does obviously make an impact. Everybody in that building believes in Gaston Moore. They say they believe in Gaston Moore. They love the guy. He probably knows the offense better than any non-coach in the building. He's one of the only guys who, was going to play for Heupel, UCF, and then made the move over to Tennessee. So he is a guy who has the respect of everyone there, and he's got some Leroy Jenkins in him, which could be bad and could be good, because he'll come in there and say, screw it, I'll throw a bomb on the first play. I don't care. He believes in himself, and going in there like Johnny Moxon. But I think they're better with Nico. Everyone knows that, right? Like you saw last week when Ole Miss was playing Georgia, had to turn to the backup for a little bit, and that kid was out there spinning it and doing some stuff. That's a really talented kid who's younger and I don't think Tennessee's situation is exactly the same, but he could manage things maybe. But on the road I wouldn't. They want Nico, I think, obviously.
Well, Well, yeah, and to your point, Wes, I think we should have clarity for sure on at least by Friday night, because if there was a scenario where Nico wasn't on the trip, you can't really put a questionable tag on that, and that report is after you've made the trip. So we saw that with Lance Hurd with Oklahoma. So, but yeah, Gaston did fine. I mean, I think he kind of looked like you would expect a backup quarterback to look. I mean, there were some throws that were a little bit off the mark. He maybe looked a little panicked at times, but he also showed the ability to stretch the field. He made some good throws over the middle. I think he had a nice throw behind a blitz that showed good field awareness, vision to know to read it and react. But yeah, the way Nico was playing was really encouraging coming off of, the second half against Alabama, throw the Kentucky game in there. He had, I think, he was 8 for 13 for 174 yards and the 2 touchdowns against Mississippi State before he went out. And, the offense had 285 yards at halftime. So, and they ended up with over 450 for a second straight game. They really took the air out of the ball in the second half. I think they were like well under 2 plays per minute, just slowing it down. They had 20 minutes of possession to try to just get out of there. And so, Gaston, I think, did a good job there. But if your best play is throw it deep and hope maybe you can get a PI, that maybe isn't the best play. But, Brew and Squirrel could have made those plays had they not been, interfered with. So, and then we're thinking Gaston Moore's, the coolest thing since sliced bread. But, yeah, I mean, you want to go in there, we mentioned this, Ben, on our no huddle. You want to go in there all hands on deck for this game because you're going to need it. And you're going to need your best players as you go and hey, take this stage and take this opportunity head on. And so if Nico is out there, then certainly that improves Tennessee's odds. And certainly it'd probably be a boost for them too if they know they're getting him back, because the players know what he can do and they've seen how kind of unflappable maybe he can be at times and the playmaker he can be at times. We've seen a little bit more of that playmaking side come out over these last couple games. And so they'll obviously be hopeful that he's there and kind of continues on the same track that he was.
Yeah, and the bigger concern for me isn't whether or not he plays, it's how effective will he be. Coming off of an injury, and the speculation is that it is a head injury. I mean, how is he going to be between the ears, quite frankly? In that environment, if he couldn't leave the locker room on Saturday night out of what we think was concern for the lights and the noise, which is what happens when you're possibly going through a concussion, like exactly a week later, you're going to be thrown in the Sanford Stadium at night. I mean, how does the body respond? I think that's honestly the bigger concern than whether or not he plays. And also it's compounded by the fact that all year long, I feel like Tennessee has done a good job of keeping Nico healthy, limiting the hits on him when they could have run him more. And this is the game with SEC championship on the line, college football playoffs on the line. This is where if it takes running Nico as much as you did against Iowa, then so be it. Yeah. But now are you going to be in position to run Nico as much after what just took place against Mississippi State and he had to leave the game for what we think was a head injury? I mean, that's not great timing for Tennessee because quarterback play is obviously important. Gaston Moore, Nico can't go in there and throw 3 or 4 picks and Tennessee still win. So I'm not saying they're null and void from importance, but Tennessee wins on Saturday night if it can run the football and if it can stop the run. If the defensive front can terrorize Georgia offensively like Ole Miss did, and Tennessee runs the ball like it has for most of the season, then they're going to win on Saturday night. I feel good about saying that. But now there's a lot of questions, Wes, about Tennessee's running game, the health of Nico. Will you be able to run Nico? But not only that, Andre Karch was missing. He's one of your 5 starting offensive linemen. I thought Lampley actually played fine when he went in there. Yeah, but you don't have a lot of options to throw in there if you're missing one of your starting O linemen. So there's some concerns up front. John Campbell Jr. can't finish the game to begin with. Javonte Spraggins, it seems like he leaves for a moment almost every game with a stinger or something, but always returns. And then the running back room as well. I mean, Deshaun Bishop, is he going to be able to play this weekend after he suffered that ankle injury against Kentucky? And where's Dylan Sampson at? I mean, I'd be lying if I said I wasn't concerned about where his body is at with the workload he's receiving. I mean, he nearly suffered
hopefully in a cryo bath.
He nearly suffered a really serious injury on Saturday night. The initial returns, or what it looked like to the naked eye, did not look good on Saturday when he got tackled awkwardly, and then he was able to return and then carried it 30 times for a career high on top of all the other rushing he's done all season long. So the running game has to be a key part for Tennessee on Saturday night. And now all of a sudden there's questions about health at quarterback, offensive line, and in the running back room, on top of the workload that Sampson has already gone through this season, and you'll be facing a tough physical Georgia defense. So that's a big question mark for me going into Saturday night, Wes.
Yeah, I think there's also one more component on top of that, as if there wasn't enough. Let's see how Dante Thornton Jr. is this week too. He's been Tennessee's most explosive downfield receiver, or downfield threat, big play threat all year. And that ties the whole thing together. That's part of it, right? Like if Nico's not able to go or isn't a threat with his legs, which I mean, if he could play, he probably would still do the same stuff with his legs, I think. But you have to have that threat, because that gets a lighter box. Like if they're not worried about if Moore's in there and they think you're just going to manage the game, guess what Georgia's going to do? It's going to stack the line of scrimmage. It's going to make, be aggressive and be, throwing stuff at you, and you're going to have to run into a tight box, or you're going to have to beat them over the top to get them out of that. And so that's where, like when you play in this Tennessee offense, you kind of need to stretch the field in order to consistently run the ball the way you want to, I think. So, because if not, then they have more 12 personnel now, but still, they're going to have as many guys as you're blocking. They're going to have a guy. So I think that's sort of the way I look at it. And I think I will say this before we move on. The last thing I'll say about the whole Nico situation for now anyways, is that if this is what it looks like it is, it might not be what it is. Like sometimes they put guys in there for protocol for precautionary reasons, and it's not what you think it is. So it's just, I think anytime anybody throws around that concussion word, sometimes it can look like one, but it's not. And sometimes it might not look like one, but it is. Like it's a really kind of complex thing there. So he might be totally fine. There's a chance he might not be, but I don't like to make assumptions with any injury, but especially an injury like that, because it's complex. And I do think Tennessee takes that stuff seriously. I do think that if he can't play, I don't think they're gonna, Bud Kilmer and put him out there. I don't think they're gonna do that. But yeah, I mean, it's certainly a complex thing at a complex time, because this is a game where if a guy can go, this is one of those, if it's not a head injury, for any other kind of injury, it's one, can you play through it? Two, are you effective? And if you can play through it and you're effective, you're going to play. And that this is one of those weeks. This is why these guys train their whole lives for games like this. And if they can go, they're going to go.
To your point, Wes, I mean, we still don't know exactly when Nico, I guess, was hurt, right? I mean, there's kind of two plays in question. And maybe it was a combination of the two. I mean, that's sort of just the complexity you were talking about. But I do think this team is built differently than I think it's still built to where, they've been winning with Dylan Sampson and defense all season. That's kind of what they've been doing. Now, if you don't have your best quarterback in there, you're going to get a lot of 8-man boxes like you got against Mississippi State, but they were still able to move the football. They were still able to run the ball. They changed some things up with how they were aligned, and the offensive line was physical, and so it worked. Could they do that against Georgia? That's a wholly different question. Mississippi State's defense is not very good. I do want to point out, Dylan, you guys were talking about Dylan Sampson's workload. I think it was you, Ben. He has 201 carries this season. That leads the SEC by a lot. The second highest carry total in the SEC is 159 by the esteemed quarterback, Diego Pavia from Ben. Where is he from?
Vanderbilt.
There you go.
And so the next highest running back total is Jarquez Hunter at 132. So Dylan Sampson has like 70 more carries than the next running back. To put his his toughness and his durability into context. Now, are they gonna ride him till the wheels fall off? I don't know. He certainly was ailing at one point, but still effective. And so, and Georgia's offense right now, it looked like a mess against Ole Miss. And so I think someone on our board asked what the magic point total, and I was like, well, your defense hasn't given up more than 19 all season, so maybe if you can get to 20 points on offense, that might be enough. You never know. But yeah, I mean, we'll just have to see. Again, I touched on this earlier. There's always just a little bit of uncertainty with some of these things, with injuries of this nature. So we'll just have to see how the week plays out. And certainly, I hope first of all that whatever the issue is with Nico, he's fine. You don't want to see guys get hurt in this game. And secondly, you want these teams to be. You don't want there to be a key injury or a key absence that takes away from what this game could be. This is a matchup of two teams with a lot of aspirations. These are two programs that they battle for a lot of recruits. There obviously are huge stakes in this game, so you want everybody to be reasonably full strength and preferably playing well, just to, for the entertainment value, and also so that we can see a great atmosphere and a good football game.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of things about this game that make it interesting. And with Sampson, I think they don't want to do that. I think they feel like they need to. This is the era of running back tandems usually, or trios, and that's how it is. But last week, I don't think they went into the game thinking we want him to have 31 touches, 30 runs and a carry, or 30 carries and a pass catch. But I don't think that with Bishop out, with the fact that Lewis was running pretty well, but he's not making guys miss. Like, I think if he gets behind somebody, he's fast enough to keep running. He's got that gear, but just go back again and look at that 33-yard touchdown run from Sampson. There were 3 or 4 parts of that run where I think a lot of running backs, most college running backs, get tackled, and he just didn't. He was able to see where the space was, to get away from. I think 3 or 4 guys got their hands on him on that play. But if you could do like a snapshot of where that play started and what was in front of him, you can see, okay, there's maybe a hole here, but he's got to go find it. And he did. And he actually went where looked like there wasn't a hole, and he found one and ran by guys. I just, right now, Lewis isn't making guys miss, really. And that's okay. You just get what's there. Jabari Small is a really nice running back for Tennessee, and he just got the yards that were there mostly and fell forward. But, Sampson with Bishop out, I think they just felt like, especially in the second half, it was like you don't want to play Sampson too much, but third downs, he's going to be in there. Red zone, he's going to be in there, which he's fumbled 3 times in the red zone, but, that's still their guy. So, but it's interesting because I think there's a lot of things about this Georgia team that are a question mark too. I mean, let's not forget that Georgia's played a tougher schedule, but it's lost twice. Tennessee has lost once. Tennessee ranked higher, even though Georgia is the favorite. But we should talk about that because I think that Georgia Ole Miss game was interesting for a lot of reasons, and it maybe makes a few things about this game seem more challenging and some maybe seem less challenging. So we'll see what that is. But I think it's going to be a fun discussion, and we're going to get right to it after taking a quick break here to pay some bills, listen to some products, services, in-house ads, etc., and then come right back here on the GoVols247 Podcast. #ad. Welcome back to the GoVols247 Podcast, brought to you by whatever product, services, and in-house ads you just heard a moment ago during that commercial break. Wes Rucker and Ben McKee and Patrick Brown coming to you on this lovely Monday in God's own Knoxville, Tennessee, talking Tennessee football as I guess now, what are we going to call it? The 4th ranked, 6th ranked, and we'll see what ranked Vols are playing Georgia this weekend, a game that if Tennessee goes to Athens and wins, Tennessee will be in the driver's seat to get to the SEC championship game and the college football playoff. You play all season to keep yourself in position for things. And Tennessee, as uneven as it's been at times, Tennessee is right there. We're in a position where if you offered this on back in like August, I think just about anybody would have taken it. So there's a lot more to discuss about this game this week, where these teams are, and we're going to get to that after a quick reminder, quick request from our end to please go rate, review, and subscribe to this podcast. Watch this podcast too. You can get it now on YouTube and Facebook and all those things. So please go do that. We have GoVols247's Facebook page, YouTube page. You can go search it right there. Boom, then bookmark it. And these podcasts are there too. But you can also cast it, anywhere you can cast the Fine Pod. You can get this podcast. We do this for free. We'd like to keep doing it for free. We enjoy doing it. There's no problems. But since we're doing it for free, I don't think it's too much to ask to go rate, review, and subscribe. Please, leave a fresh review. That helps us out tremendously, really. Please go do that stuff, and tell your friends. There's one of my favorite things is listening to how people find this podcast. I hear all kinds of fun stuff on people who told them and where they found it. And, they were walking around somewhere and was it a shopping mall in Nebraska one time? And somebody saw somebody in a Tennessee shirt. And now that person is a listener of the podcast. I love that stuff. So please, if you're already doing all that stuff, thank you. We love you. If not,
I award you no points, and may God have mercy on your soul.
Straight back into it, guys. I think Georgia against Ole Miss showed some real issues, right? We're talking legitimate issues. Like if you were watching that game, you could look at it and say that team's got an offensive line that is not that great and is banged up right now. The wide receivers are not getting a lot of separation on routes. There's no Brock Bowers in there to save the day like a superhuman. Beck has been good at times. Other times he's kind of looked like a deer in the headlights, and he's made some mistakes that you wouldn't expect someone of his caliber to make. The play calling's not that great, and their running game's inconsistent. So you put all that together, and you look at Tennessee being statistically, a little bit leakier lately, but still one of the best defenses in college football, hasn't allowed 20 points in 10 games. You would say advantage Tennessee. Like if you would take those uniforms off of those teams, you would say, I like that matchup for Tennessee. But Sanford Stadium at night, now they're desperate. Kirby Smart has for years, anytime he can make his guys feel like an underdog, he tries like hell to do it, even though it's kind of hilarious at times because they're not. Even in this game, they're 10-point favorites. But should they be 10-point favorites? Maybe because it's Sanford Stadium at night and Heupel's teams haven't been great on the road and Georgia's more desperate. But I mean, what do y'all think about that? I mean, y'all watched the game too. At least I know Ben was in transit, but I know Patrick, you watched it.
Yeah, I was making my way back from old Louisville, where the great Deacon Rick Barnes and Chaz Lanier, despite people telling me Dalton Connect no longer plays for Tennessee, put Pat Kelsey and Louisville into a body bag in a Muhammad Ali boxing bag on Saturday afternoon. I was making my way back, but I did listen. I was listening to the national broadcast. It helped pass the time on my drive back to Deland from the Yum Center. Got to make sure you exaggerate the Yum because there's that exclamation point in there. The Yum Center. But it just sounded like what could go wrong for Georgia's offense did go wrong for Georgia's offense. And it's odd how that game ended up playing out because of the way the game started. I mean, it looked like there for a second that Georgia was going to be the one with the belt in hand and bending Ole Miss over, and somehow Ole Miss stole the belt from Georgia and did the butt whooping themselves. I think the point that I want to make, Patrick, is in listening to Josh Heupel on Monday when he was asked about Carson Beck, he made the comment of how he is an extremely talented quarterback. The offense kind of goes as he does, but it's not always the quarterback's fault when something goes wrong. And I'm paraphrasing, and that's what I believe Josh Heupel is getting at is my point. I think he was making the point that on the surface, it looks like Carson Beck is having a really bad year by what the standards were coming into the year. And he's receiving a lot of blame right now. But then Heupel said, it takes all 11 to get the job done offensively. And I thought he said that in the sense of like it's not all Carson Beck's fault like a lot of people are making it out to be maybe right now. That comment really stood out to me today. And I yes, Carson Beck has made some baffling decisions with the football this year. He's thrown some really, really bad interceptions. He has not looked like an experienced first-round quarterback like a lot of people thought he would. But it's been very similar to Tennessee's offense, it seems, from watching from afar. It's just kind of people taking their turn to help the offense go kaput. And I thought the Ole Miss game was a great example of that in the sense of the offensive line just completely got beaten up. They couldn't run the ball. They don't have the receivers that scare you like they do in the past. You made the point about Brock Bowers not having him anymore. That offense has just dropped off from a personnel standpoint. The personnel is not as good as it has been the last couple of years. And yes, Carson Beck has been bad at times, but he's not receiving a whole lot of help around him. And I think that's got to make you feel good if you're a Tennessee fan, because Ole Miss's defense was very, very impressive on Saturday, particularly with the defensive front. And what does Tennessee do best this season? They wreck the trenches up front defensively. So I think that's got to be a good sign if you're a Tennessee fan, Patrick.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, that's this Georgia offense has some issues and to your point, it's not just the quarterback. I mean, Ole Miss had 5 sacks, and Ole Miss is another one of those teams where, for better or worse, I think the national perception is they're all about offense. They're all about Jackson Dart, Lane Kiffin. They go fast, the big plays, all that stuff. But they've been really good defensively this season, and obviously they have built that defense heavily through the portal. But I mean, they got some dudes up front, and those dudes up front were wrecking shop against Georgia, and that was really impressive to see. And to your point, Ben, that gives you some belief if you're Tennessee, because we've seen what this defensive line can do when it's fully on. Now, I would say last 2 games, they haven't necessarily been quote unquote fully on. Now, obviously they made some big plays in the second half against Mississippi State, but I mean, you're giving up 175-ish rushing yards over the past 2 games. Kentucky's an okay running team, and Mississippi State's a decent running team, but Heupel's right. I mean, Carson Beck in SEC play has 10 touchdown passes and 12 interceptions. But as we mentioned, he got sacked 5 times the other day. Georgia is, I'm looking this up on the fly, so give me some. It's like Georgia is 15th in the SEC in rushing. That's pretty crazy. I mean, usually you don't, you think about the stable of running backs those guys have had. And certainly, they bring in Trevor Etienne through, from Florida. He's been sort of in and out of the lineup, maybe a little banged up. And, their leading receiver is Arian Smith, who's kind of a deep ball guy. I mean, so, and they don't have, and Ben, you mentioned Bowers. I'm surprised you didn't mention George Pickens, obviously, who's making plays in the NFL for a certain black and yellow team. But, they're like 12th in the SEC in third downs. So, I mean, you have a quarterback that's throwing the ball to the other team. You don't have much of a run game. You're struggling to protect the passer. You can't extend drives on third down. I mean, those are deep-rooted issues. That's not just, I mean, and we're 9-10 games in, so you kind of are what you are at this point. So all of that fits really well in the Tennessee's defense, but and how it plays, but you still got to go out there and play the game. And certainly there's a sense that Georgia probably could just explode on offense at any moment and put up 40 on somebody. They obviously stormed back against Alabama in that game. But can they get it all together in a week? I mean, down there, they're talking about, Carson Beck is taking a lot of heat. They got a guy celebrating with Ole Miss fans after the game, and Kirby Smart's calling him an idiot and stuff. I mean, this is unfamiliar territory for Georgia. So this is going to be like a back against the wall kind of game for that program. Mm-hmm. And obviously they have a very high standard down there. And so it's kind of a gut check time for them, because if they lose this game, they're not going to go to the playoffs. And so that would be a big shock for where that program has been. I mean, they were one bad game against Alabama away from probably three-peating. So, but it doesn't take long for things to, deteriorate in college football. You look at Florida under Dan Mullen. You look at what the hell has happened to Florida State. I mean, from 13-0 to losing a bowl game by 60, and now they're 1-9. So I'm not saying it's going to happen to Georgia, but Tennessee has a chance to nudge Georgia a little bit further into the ditch because they were thoroughly, from what I could tell, and I wasn't, I had my one eye on pregame and for Tennessee and one eye on the tablet in the press box during the second half of that game. But every time I looked up, Carson Beck was under pressure, thrown into traffic.
Yep.
Or Ole Miss had guys running with no defenders near them. So that was stark to see, and certainly Georgia had its issues against against Alabama too, where they just couldn't stop Jalen Milroe, and Tennessee seems to be in the minority of teams that have been able to slow him down this season, given what he just did to LSU. But I mean, there's things that fit in favorably for this team, but they have to manage the stage for Tennessee. That is, they have to manage the stage. I thought they were a little deer in the headlights 2 years ago when they went there as the number one team. Maybe they just weren't ready for the fire and brimstone that Georgia, the football team, and Georgia, the fan base, brought that day. And for all the issues that Tennessee's had starting games this season, if you could start this game well, you could potentially take the crowd out. You can, we've seen sometimes for Tennessee, they start well, they have a good opening drive, then they fumble or something messes up on offense, and they kind of go into the tank. If you can get Georgia to struggle early, couple of 3 and outs, maybe a turnover early in the game, maybe it starts to get middle on that sideline. So, this Georgia offense is right for the taking for this Tennessee defense. But Tennessee has got to figure out some of the issues with the run defense, and they still got to play at the level that we've seen them play all season, where they've generated turnovers, sacks, negative plays, get off the field on third down. They've got to do those things that have worked so well for them all season in this big moment on this big stage if they're going to get out of there with the win.
Yeah, I think about like Tennessee's defense the past 2 weeks. And what I mean by that is like how there's been a lot of sort of frustration or some concern and people saying, oh, this looks bad. And then at the end of the day, you've given up 32 points in those 2 games. Take that feeling, multiply it by like 1 million. And I think you've got where things are with some Georgia fans right now, because what's that program lost 4 games in 4 years or something like that is what it was, something ridiculous. And they're sitting there still with a chance to play for an SEC title, to go to the college football playoff, to win a national championship. And you wouldn't know that necessarily by talking to them, because when you reset expectations, when you raise the bar, things get difficult. And you think about, to a small extent, or to a smaller extent with Urban Meyer, to a much larger extent with Nick Saban, that stuff's not normal. It's not normal to be that good for that long. It gets hard to maintain a standard, to first off keep building the rosters, especially in this portal era. That's hard to do, to just stack rosters, keep guys. It's hard to maintain an edge when you are winning just about every game you play. And people are trying to catch you. People are working hard to catch you. So, and you're everybody's Super Bowl. So that's all it takes, is just a little bit, and it changes everything. And so I think we just assumed that with Kirby Smart there, that was the next like Nick Saban dynasty. And maybe it will be. But I mean, that's not a guarantee. It's hard now, like, to keep guys. You can the portal door swings both ways. So maybe you can go get a couple of great starters, but then lose 4 or 5 guys who would be really important depth pieces. And so is that a gain over the course of a long season? Maybe it is, maybe it's not. Like it just takes a little bit to fall behind or to fall back to the pack. And if you're in the pack, it takes just a little bit to get away from the pack, like behind them, and you can't catch them. So for years. So they're fine margins. But what I do know is that this is the earliest in a season that I think Georgia has been back against the wall in a while. And the desperation mode at this time in November is different for that bunch. So I'll be interested to see what that crowd's like. I'd be interested to see what that team is like, because I think Tennessee's walking into the gates of hell in this game in terms of what it's going to be like at the beginning with the atmosphere. And I think it was Pat's point a minute ago, and it's a good one. The first couple of drives are so important in this game, because right now Georgia's teetering but they're going to go into that game and everybody's going to be behind them. They're going to, play the fight song. They're going to dim the lights. They're going to put on a light show. They're going to be rare. They have a whole day to tailgate on a beautiful campus. They're going to be fired up. But if Tennessee handles that, then all of a sudden they start worrying again. So, yeah, I mean, I think the first few drives are critical in this game.
Yeah, I'm very curious to see how Georgia performs this weekend because we've already seen them with their back up against the wall once this season. Their backs were up against the wall in Austin, and they just completely whooped Texas's butt. Now, part of that is I think Texas is a bit overrated, but that was still a heck of a performance by Georgia. Kirby obviously was popping off in his post-game interview on the field, was upset about one of the pass interference calls and just flat out said that the refs were trying to rob him or something along those lines. So we've seen an ornery Kirby already once this season. And I felt like Georgia had its back against the wall in that game as well, and they responded really well when everybody did kind of count them out going into that football game. They absolutely did, and I think what's weird about this matchup this weekend is a lot of people are counting out Georgia in the sense of viewing them as a team that can win the national championship. They are viewing them as somebody who is very flawed, which I think they're correct in thinking so. But Kirby's not going to be able to use his usual underdog message to the team because they're double-digit favorites going into this football game. So I'm interested to see how they play because I'm with y'all that their backs are up against the wall, and we've seen them already perform well once this season with their backs up against the wall. And I do think it'll be critical for Tennessee to take the crowd out of it early. I think that's a great point. And Tennessee has to go into Sanford Stadium and execute on its first possession, on its second possession, on its third possession, the way Alabama did this past weekend in Baton Rouge. Alabama, amidst that environment, what you just detailed, Wes, that Tennessee is walking into this weekend in Athens, Alabama just did that in Baton Rouge, and whispers Baton Rouge has a better college football environment than Athens, Georgia. So
Sanford's gotten better, but Death Valley at night is in its own.
I didn't say it was bad. Sanford's going to be electric and it's going to be top notch, but Baton Rouge is 1A with like Tennessee. Honestly, Ryan and I talked about it on the post-game Kentucky podcast that we think like Tennessee and LSU are probably neck and neck, no pun intended, to LSU's band. That they are neck and neck, like 1A, 1B in terms of college football environments. And Alabama marched in there and just punched LSU right in the throat. Not even in the face, in the throat, and did not take their foot off of the throat for the entirety of the first half. And LSU quit. And Georgia is – I would say they're a little shaken in terms of confidence. If Tennessee can come in and drive the ball down the field the way Jalen Milroe did in Baton Rouge and did on the next couple of possessions as well, then Patrick, I think you are looking at a situation to where, again, this Georgia team is already lacking confidence. I mean, it could spiral on them, not in the sense of it, maybe Tennessee winning in a blowout, but I think it could get away from them and just not be able to find that rhythm again and potentially come back and win.
Yeah, I mean, I'll be interested to see what maybe the national outlook on this game is. I feel like a lot of people are assuming, whether you see it via playoff projections or what have you, that Georgia's going to win this game. And you know, there's not there were various times during the Nick Saban dynasty that there were eulogies being read about the Tide, and then they would come back forcefully. This is one of those moments, I think, for Georgia. And to go back to that Texas game, that was a prime Texas faceplant. That program has done less with more for so long, that them just completely botching that situation, that game, that opportunity was, you could probably see that coming from a mile away. But yeah, I mean, if you're Tennessee, you know, we talk about what if you're spiraling for Georgia. If you're Tennessee, you win this game, you have a foot in Atlanta. You just got to beat Vanderbilt, which I know Vanderbilt's better, and that's a rivalry game and all that. But, you know, you'd be so galvanized, I think, by having a chance to play for the SEC title. And everybody's talking about the playoff, and it's like Tennessee still has a chance to win the SEC championship, which is a big deal. I know that those I know that conference championship games aren't going away, but how much are they really going to mean in the realm of the expanded playoff, whether it's 12, 14, if we get to 16, what have you. But, you still have a chance to win a conference title, and Tennessee obviously hasn't played in Atlanta a long time. So you've got that opportunity. Obviously, if you win this game, your playoff percentage in the FPI and in everybody's eyes is going to go way up because you're going to have wins against Georgia and Alabama on your resume. Not a lot of teams are going to be able to have that. And you've also got a chance to, send a program that you do a lot of recruiting against out of the playoff and send them into more misery, more or less.
And a team that not only do you recruit a lot against, I mean, they're currently trying to steal 2, 3, 4
right.
of your current commits.
Right. And so, I mean, this game is the stakes beyond this season and in the big picture are huge for Tennessee. And we got to see if this program has really grown up to where they can handle it. Because 2 years ago, they went in there number 1. That pissed Georgia off, and they weren't ready. 7, 8 false starts. All the plays that they were making down the field, they missed. I remember a play early in that game where they had Hyatt open. It was like one of the few times he was open, and they just missed him. I mean, if you hit that one there for a touchdown, that game could be different. They got hit in the mouth early, like you talked about with Alabama and LSU. I mean, Georgia was, after maybe the opening exchanges, Georgia was going right down the field. So and it was 21-3 early in the second quarter, and it was never really a game from that point on. So that's what's fascinating to me is can Tennessee go in there? And I go back to something that Amari Thomas said early in the season. I think it was maybe before Oklahoma. It was, the defense has got to go in there and set the tone and take the crowd out. If you get a couple early 3 and outs, there's going to be audible. We've all been in stadiums and seen that. There's probably been some of that in Neyland this year with the offense struggling the way it has for Tennessee. So if Tennessee's defense is able to go in there and set the tone, defensive line, win up front, maybe get an early turnover, you can cast more doubt in the minds of that Georgia team and that Georgia fan base. But I mean, like I said, with this, the times that people were eulogizing the Nick Saban dynasty being over, and Alabama will come out and say very resoundingly, nope, it's not. That's a very real possibility for this game for Georgia, because they have a coach that's won 2 national titles and won a lot of football games, and they've got a lot of talented players. And so, as Heupel said Monday, they make you earn everything. Tennessee's got to go in there, earn it. They've got to go in there and do the pushing, right? Georgia's teetering. You're going to have to knock them off. If you're going to go at the king, go at the champ, you can't miss. And so this is Tennessee's chance to not miss.
Yeah, I think there are that LSU Alabama game. There are give or take like a half dozen major veins in the neck, and I'm pretty sure Bama smashed or sliced all of them open in Baton Rouge. I mean, that was not close down the stretch. That was a whooping, and I think I have one big thought. Or one big request for this game. If I'm a Tennessee fan and I'm sitting here looking at this game, I would say, please, for the love of God, do not slow down on 3rd down in this game. Do not do it. You are walking. If you keep slowing down on 3rd down, that crowd could eat you alive. I don't. Those guys know more about the game than I do, but the slowing down on 3rd down, I don't get. I get that you want to be in a good play call, and if you're at home, okay. But the tempo is a big part of what gives people problems against this offense. And yeah, Georgia just saw it against Ole Miss, so that's a little bit, that's not great for Tennessee. That this will be the second week in a row against this kind of tempo. But I just, on the road, slowing down on 3rd down, I don't like it. I don't like it, guys. I don't like it. I think if they do that in this game, that's bad news. But maybe eating my words on that one, but I just don't do that.
Which do you like the least? Slowing down on 3rd downs, short yardage shotgun, or black cleats with white socks?
In order, shotgun, short yardage.
Is the thing you hate the most? Are we going? What's the order of descending?
Okay. We'll go what I hate the most. I think probably short yard shotgun. I just don't like
Gosh, I'm
at
so
all.
proud of you. I was
Uh,
really worried you were going to say the thing
and
that
then
has
and then
nothing to do with the game.
second is the thing that has nothing to do with the game, which is the affront to God and man, which is white socks with black cleats. You will look like a 70-year-old man mowing his yard. That's what you look like when you wear that. Stop doing it. It's not a fashion statement. It looks stupid. It looks stupid. Don't do it. And then third, just behind that would be a tempo offense slowing down on third down on the road, which I think is just a bad idea.
I love to ask Wes about to rank the things he hates from most to worst, whether it be 90s rock bands or things about football.
Give you a list.
I just want to point out though. I just want to point out though
really
that
get a
in the
list
game
going this year.
I just want to point out though, in the game the other night, one team on 4th and goal at the 1 brought in 2 defensive linemen and had 6 fullbacks on the field. Did they score a touchdown?
No, they did not. But what had what had they done every other time?
One team on 4th and goal at the 1 went shotgun. What did that team do? Give them 6.
It scored a touchdown.
I just want to say, I'm just pointing it out.
What had Tennessee short yardage package done every other snap it had played this season before that? One
worked.
Run it up the middle.
I will say this: if Tennessee announces on Thursday morning that they're wearing the orange pants, they're going to lose by 40. But if they come out and say that they're going into the Stormtroopers, well, let me rephrase this: if they come out and say they're wearing the orange pants, they're losing. If they come out and say they're going Stormtroopers, they're probably winning. If they throw us all for a loop and bring back those orange helmets that should be in the bottom of a river near Columbia, South Carolina, they're going to lose by 40.
Would Georgia be going dark mode in this game? Georgia, I mean, they do that down there too. I wonder if this will be the game this season.
What Tennessee needs to do: white jersey, white pants, black cleats, and black socks. Vols by 50 if that happens, with the black Air Force One energy.
As long as you match the socks
2006 energy.
As long as you match the socks with the shoes, you can get away with it. But traditionally, no black in the uniform, no black on the cleats. That is a rule in baseball. It is a rule of sports fashion historically. Just don't do it.
You show me the rule book where it says that.
Yes.
What color cleats do the Oakland A's wear?
Who watches the Oakland A's?
Oh, I do. Even though I guess they're the Sacramento A's now.
Not everybody stays up till 3 a.m. every night.
I'm just saying that it's a thing. Don't
Tennessee
match your socks and your shoes.
Wasn't Tennessee wearing the black accessories with the white unis back in 06 when they blocked the punt in the end zone and got on Sports Illustrated?
I think they were wearing black. I think, and that was one of the first years that Fulmer had let them do that, because for years Fulmer was old school and it was black. It was black shoes and white socks.
Fulmer was superstitious.
Well, it was, call it whatever you want, but that's what he was for years. I just what were they wearing? What were they wearing in 16? Before we get out of here, what were they wearing in 16? Do you remember?
All white.
Stormtroopers.
They were stormtroopers then. Yeah, then do that again. That's fine. My favorite uniform of theirs on the road is the orange pants, but they've not been good in them lately.
Wes, do you believe in black Air Force One energy?
If you're wearing black socks with it, sure.
That's the energy that Tennessee needs to walk into Sanford Stadium with on Saturday. They need to walk in. All of them need to be dressed when they get off the bus, their team-issued sweats and black Air Force Ones. And then they need to switch into their black Air Force One energy cleats and then take the field. If they show up in black cleats, I'm telling you right now, Wes, they show up in black cleats with the all-white jerseys and they have the black Air Force One energy, Vols by 20.
What if they do
but don't walk in like
go ahead.
Don't walk in like the Alabama guy with the cigar though, because that's never, that backfires.
What about 1980s Miami stepping off the plane in fatigues? That would be this week. You could say it was a Veterans Day thing, so you could get away with it, and you could be like, oh, this is combat. Because I that to a serious point, guys, that's the last thing I'll say seriously is I think that you need to don't play the crowd, don't play the uniform, play the team. If you play the team, if Tennessee the team plays Georgia the team, and Tennessee does not put Georgia on a pedestal, Tennessee should be right there. But if you play the crowd, if you play the past, if you play the uniform, then you're losing and maybe losing bad. So you can't go into this game with any sort of apprehension or fear. Like be like have a pair, coach with a pair, play with a pair. If you lose, you lose, but don't go down there and be timid about anything.
You know what you just described? Black Air Force One energy. That's what they need to have on Saturday in order to come out with a win. And not only whatever they get off the bus in, I think they should immediately walk onto the field, get in the end zone, and Jackson Moy lead them in a couple of different Polynesian dances. Everybody huddled around in the end zone, and Jackson Moy gets them going with the help of Nico, of course.
Yeah, that would you do some of those war dances, and you're good to go. Right? That's the kind of energy
Omar Norman Lott is not allowed to participate, though.
No, he stays on the bus. He stays on the bus.
Yes, he sits on the bus. Let him dress out on the bus, and then like 3 minutes before kickoff, let the bus door swing open and let him go onto the field. Because if they do some more dances Polynesian style in the end zone when they arrive, he's not going back to the Tennessee locker room. He's going to the Georgia locker room, sprinting right across the field and into the Georgia locker room. And I don't think anybody needs those problems.
It'll be amazing if he makes it through this season without getting ejected in a game. Like that, he walks a fine line so often. And the other day they would have had a 15-yard penalty on a kickoff if he had just stopped, let them call the penalty on Mississippi State and walk away. But he can't do it. He just can't do it. He can't do it. He can't not fight. He's one of those guys, like his fight or flight stays on fight all the time.
Let's make a prediction on the way out the door. What quarter do you all think Omar Norman Lott receives his 15-yard penalty? I'll say first quarter. I'll say on the first possession, the first defensive possession of the game for Tennessee.
I'll say third quarter if they're not playing that great. Third quarter is when he'll go out there and they'll be trying to turn the game around. And if like things aren't going well, then he's like, all right, now I'm just going to fight somebody.
I'm going. He goes penalty free.
No,
this is somebody that is the answer of somebody who is scared of Omar Norman Lott tracking him down.
And for the sake of this bet, offsetting personal fouls do count, even though they don't go in the book as one. We know what he did.
Yeah, every team needs that guy that lives on the edge.
That's fine. I've heard coaches say for years you need some crazy D linemen. That's okay, or crazy corner, crazy D lineman. You need a couple of them.
You need some Tony Allens in your life, right, Ben?
Yeah, but
yeah,
and sometimes
Tony Allen was a guaranteed technical per game.
And sometimes if you keep your hand on the stove, you're going to get burned. You just have to hope it's not, a third-degree burn that costs you, that's that bad. So we'll see. But I think that kind of energy, seriously, I think it's important this week. I think Tennessee can't play the crowd. It can't play the uniform. It's got to play the team. If you play that team and you play well, you can beat that team. But
I'm going to pitch a UTEP week mailbag podcast where we all just submit lists and have Wes rank how much he hates things.
You ask me an honest question, you'll get an honest answer. You may not like it, but you'll get what I think. So, if you ask the question and it's not, and it has nothing to do with politics or religion, I'll answer it. If it has to do with those two things, I'm not going anywhere near it with any CBS logo or GoVols247 logo around me. But I mean, anything else, I'll tell you what I think. So we will see. We got a lot. This is going to be a fun week, guys. We'll see what happens on Saturday, but the build up to this, like what this is going to be, what this stage is like, guys, Tennessee is back. Like, Tennessee is not back in terms of like being over the top yet, but Tennessee is back. There have been years where we covered this crap and you're nowhere near things that mattered. And you do your job because it's your job and everything's fine. It's a great job. But, when you cover a program like this, you expect to be covering some awesome stuff. And now they're back there, and I appreciate that. It makes it fun. This is fun. I hope you, as a Tennessee fan out there listening, hope you enjoy that. Listen, like, you got to win at some point, but like, Tennessee's back. You're relevant. You're in the discussion. You're fighting for championships in November. Hey, this is what, as Meek Mill said, used to dream at times like this. This is what you wanted, and you're here. So appreciate that. We got a lot to discuss throughout this whole week. We're going to do it. Got plenty of podcast stuff. We'll also do some basketball stuff this week. We need to, obviously, with the 11th ranked Vols. I think they're back to 11th. Maybe that's what they are. I think I saw that today. So yeah, and we got a lot of stuff to discuss there, and obviously a lot of football stuff this week. We'll talk to the Georgia guys. We'll have all kinds of fun, all kinds of content, video, podcast content, transcripts, analysis, all of it will be there on GoVols247.com. So go check that out right now. And Ben and Pat, thank you all for being here, fellas.